Important update about YouTube playlists. Hey everyone. We've received many messages asking why our YouTube playlists aren't showing up. Do we create YouTube playlists? Yes, we absolutely do. So why can't you see them? Honestly, we're not sure. We've been in contact with YouTube support for several months now, but we still haven't received a clear answer or solution. After much discussion, our team has decided to take matters into our own hands. We believe the issue might be related to the number of playlists we've created on a single channel, possibly too many. Our solution? We're launching 2 additional YouTube channels, giving us a total of 3. This way, we can organize our audiobooks better and avoid the playlist visibility issue in the future. This change only affects our YouTube audience. If you're a patron supporter, you can still access all our audiobooks by visiting the collection menu on Patreon. Thanks so much for your time and continued support. Happy listening. Chapter 1. Inheritance begins. Beep. Mental fluctuations detected in carbon-based organism. Identifying species. Confirmed. Species, human. Genetic code locked. Success, soul strength evaluation initiated. Minimum adaptation standard met. Beginning system implantation, implantation complete. System submodules rebooted successfully. Preparing for dimensional shift, recording initial coordinates, dimension A5802, universe Z193. Milky Way Galaxy, Orion Arm, Solar System, 3rd planet carbon-based life confirmed. Jump coordinates locked. Complete, dimensional travel begins. Labyrinth City or Ario. Outside the headquarters of the Loki Familia, a slim and frail-looking young man was leaning against the corner of an alley wall. His hair was an uncommon jet black, and his clothing didn't match Ario's popular styles. Tight, inflexible black fabric clung to his body, making him look like someone not suited for movement. Despite clearly being out of place, none of the passers-by stopped to check on him. At most, someone gave him a curious glance from afar. This was Loki Familia's turf, and no one wanted trouble. In a city where over 90% of people spent their days battling monsters in the dungeon to survive, no one had the energy to mind a stranger's business. If they had any spare time, adventurers who lived on the edge preferred to relax at the red light district or enjoy a feast at a favorite tavern. Compared to pleasure, no one wanted to waste time on someone irrelevant. Day passed quickly. As the street emptied, the man still lay motionless in the damp, dark corner. Except for the gentle rise and fall of his chest, he looked like a corpse. A cough suddenly escaped his mouth. As night deepened, his breathing grew stronger. The sudden sound startled a few rats feeding near him. The next moment, he opened his eyes. They were pitch black, matching his hair. So this is hell? He stared silently at the star-filled sky above, feeling the cold and rough ground beneath him. His expression was frozen. There really is a hell. He wasn't surprised or confused about his situation, nor did he rush to stand. He clearly remembered what had happened. Takashi Nake, 23, had graduated a year ago. A few days earlier, under his family's pressure, he had gone on a blind date and failed. The girl was decent looking, also a recent graduate, working an average job. Both families wanted them to marry and have children. On paper, Kai had a good chance. He wasn't handsome, but not ugly either. Average face, decent income, stable background. If nothing went wrong, he could have gone to the marriage office with her within half a year. But things went wrong. Kai was still into his high school hobby, anime. A hardcore otaku. During the date, while the girl casually asked about his love life, a motorcycle passed by outside playing a song from an anime. Kai instinctively hummed along. The girl asked what song it was, and Kai ended up spending the rest of the date passionately explaining anime culture. When they left the cafe, he was glowing with happiness. The girl, on the other hand, looked completely drained. Her smile barely held together. That blind date, which should have been a sure success, collapsed completely. Kai didn't care. He wasn't in a rush to marry, and he didn't feel anything for her. She wasn't into anime either. What kind of relationship or marriage could come from that? But that was only his view. His parents didn't agree. They believed his obsession with anime, games, and novels ruined him. If they had known earlier, they would never have let him get into otaku culture. Now they could only vent their frustration, hoping he'd come to his senses and turn his life around. To escape the nagging, Kai rented a private room in a net cafe near his workplace. He worked during the day and lived there at night, planning to wait a few days before returning home. He never expected that choice to cost him his life. Because of poor maintenance, the cafe circuits sparked a fire. Most people escaped safely except Kay, who was asleep in his suit in a private room. When he woke up, the fire was out of control, and he died from smoke inhalation. Dio, you owe me a life. When you come down here one day, I'm not letting you off easy. Remembering the pain of death, Kai narrowed his eyes, thinking about the net cafe owner and how to get revenge. But suddenly, a mechanical female voice exploded in his mind. Beep. Host's mental activity detected. Beginning data transmission. Who? Who's there? Startled, Kai pushed himself up. But before he could rise, a surge of information flooded into his brain, knocking him back down. Death. Inheritance. Transmigration. Class system. Horario. Dungeon. It took a long time for Kai to recover. Holding his head, he slowly stood and walked out of the alley. What he saw were large buildings in medieval fantasy style. The nearest was a brightly lit mansion, with foreign writing on its signboard. Staring at everything in front of him, Kai felt like he was dreaming. Even accepting his own death hadn't hit him as hard as this. So I'm still alive? Life sign stable. Health condition, suboptimal. Please consume food promptly to maintain normal functions, the voice echoed again in his head. This time, Kai wasn't as panicked. He spoke softly. System. Ding. A light blue screen appeared in front of him, showing a humanoid shadow and lines of text. Name, Takashi Nake, race, human, age, 23, height, 176 cm, weight, 64 kg, spirit, 8, 10, strength, 6, 10, agility, 7, 10, endurance, 8, 10, constitution, 10, 10, class inheritance, none, energy, 215.02. Kai's body trembled as he stared at the screen. I really transmigrated. And with a system too. Actually, it was the system that brought him here. Even his body had been remade. The system's name was Class Inheritance System. Its origin was unknown, even it had no record of where it came from. Its purpose, to cultivate a successor who could inherit and preserve powerful classes across the multiverse. As the system's host, Kai needed to train these inheritances and complete trial missions to unlock new ones. To enhance his combat potential, the system also had a dimension-hopping module, in other words, targeted transmigration. With enough energy, he could travel to any anime world, Date Alive, Fate, Tsukiheim, Black Lagoon. For a hardcore otaku, nothing was more exciting than entering an anime world. Actually, there was, being able to enter more than one. He could transmigrate again and again. What could be better? The world he was in now was Danmachi. While recalling details of the anime, Kai summoned the system again and opened the inventory. According to the earlier transmission, he should have a starter gift. A beginner pack? How cliché. Though it felt a bit cheap, he didn't hesitate. Seeing the purple box in the inventory, he activated it mentally. Ding. Beginner pack activated, congratulations, host has gained passive skill, language proficiency level 3, 5, congratulations, host has received stat boosts, spirit +2, strength +4, agility +3, endurance +2, constitution +0, congratulations, host has unlocked one class inheritance draw. Begin random selection? Warm energy surged through his limbs, then spread through his whole body. A strange, tingling comfort followed. After 2 rounds of this internal warmth, it faded. What replaced it was an overwhelming sense of power. Incredible. He looked at his hands. 10 pale fingers closed into fists. His strength had increased. All 5 base stats had reached 10 human limit. Beyond that was another life form entirely. He moved a few steps and punched the air a few times before calming down. Looking again at the mansion sign, the strange writing was now as familiar as his native language. Language proficiency level 3, grants natural understanding and affinity for languages. Enables fluent reading and writing of any known text. Increases resistance to language-based attacks. Boosts damage when using language-based skills. For someone who had only known Chinese and English, this was a powerful skill. But when Kai read the words on the sign, his smile froze. Loki Familia. One of the dominant factions in Horario. Home of the strongest female swordsman Eyes Wallenstein. Its main members were all around level 5 to 6, strong enough to hunt monsters from the lower levels of the dungeon. Stronger than monsters themselves. What worried Kai more was their deity. Loki, an ancient god who had sealed most of her divine powers, was still terrifying. If she noticed his otherworldly status, she wouldn't show mercy. His grin vanished. The excitement faded like ice water poured on his head. Without hesitation, Kai turned toward the darker streets. Wherever there was less light, there were fewer people. Or they were just too poor to afford lighting. These people hadn't joined any familia and couldn't enter the dungeon. They survived through low-paying jobs. In the areas where the poor lived, no familia would take notice. Without familias, there was no need to worry about encountering deities. With his body pushed to the limit of human capacity, Takashi Nakai walked quickly and soon left the brightly lit Loki Familia far behind. the surroundings gradually became shrouded in darkness. Slowing his pace, Takashi Nakai examined the rundown, dilapidated homes as he walked, thinking. Although the system hadn't forced him to complete any tasks yet, it was inevitable that he would eventually face the so-called trial missions. Since they were called trials, they wouldn't be easy, and in the worst-case scenario, he might even die from one. So the most pressing matter now was to grow stronger, as fast as possible, to ensure his survival when the time came. Besides relying on the system's inheritance, being in the labyrinth city of Arario gave him another clear option: join a familia, receive a god's blessing, then enter the dungeon to slay monsters and earn exilia to grow stronger quickly. But whether he wanted to join a familia or obtain a blessing, the prerequisite was contact with a deity. That gave Takashi Nakai pause. In anime, the gods looked harmless, some even silly or gullible, but they were true gods who had lived for millions of years. They were surely not as simple as they seemed in fiction. The one exception, and the reason Takashi Nakai was even considering this, was the oddball among the heavenly gods, Hestia. He didn't have any delusional fantasies about her. He was interested because he knew her critical weakness, the only member of the Hestia familia, the white-haired brat Belcranel. Maybe it was because of his overpowering protagonist Tora, but this goddess, who had been single for millions of years in the heavens, fell hopelessly in love with Belle the moment she descended. And Belle, a naive and innocent teen, had no clue what to do about it. Enviable. But it also gave Kai a window of opportunity. Unlike ancient gods, people were more susceptible to persuasion, especially protagonists like Belle, who could easily be swayed by sweet talk. If Hestia didn't notice anything unusual about him, great. But if she did, Kai could use Belle to restrain her, preventing himself from being too passive. Next step: find the lily virgin goddess with twin tails. In the dark, Takashi Nakai's eyes gleamed as he laid out his plan. Then, he quietly activated the system. He'd received a random class inheritance from the newbie gift pack. Now was the perfect time to use it. It would help bolster his upcoming plans. System: initiate random inheritance draw. Class inheritance random draw starting. As the system's cold mechanical voice echoed, a golden roulette wheel appeared in the interface and began spinning rapidly. Kai stared intently at the spinning wheel, anticipation rising. What job would his first inheritance be? The wheel soon slowed, and the golden pointer stopped at a pair of single-handed swords, one black, one blue. Seeing the familiar icon, Takashi Nakai's breath caught. No way. Congratulations, host. You have obtained the Black Swordsman class inheritance. Exclusive skill tree unlocked. Chapter 2, The Twin-Tailed Girl Who Bounces. Though the system's tone was still mechanical, in Kai's ears, it sounded like heavenly music. His eyes widened in disbelief, heart pounding with excitement. Black Swordsman. I can't believe I got Garito's inheritance. He knew Kirigaya Kazuto all too well. Black Swordsman, beater, dual blade, techno cheater, harem king. This guy had taken down a system admin, slashed bullets with lightsaber speed, pulled off 999 hit sword skills, had brothers and babes alike. And never missed a chance to flirt. A walking bundle of sin. And now, Kai had drawn his inheritance. If the system had a physical form, he would have kissed it on the spot. So maybe, just maybe, he was one of those chosen of Lady Luck after all? Breathing in the cold night air, Takashi Nakai forced himself to calm down and turn to the glowing interface. The black humanoid shadow representing him looked the same. His 5 stats hadn't changed either. The only visible difference under class inheritance, the word none, was replaced by Black Swordsman. After a moment, the shadowy figure faded and transformed into an inverted skill tree. So this is the Black Swordsman's exclusive skill tree? Eyes bright, Kai scanned the fruit-like icons hanging on the tree. One-handed sword, dual blades, insight, balance, Godspeed reflexes, solo player, strategy fiend, light of resolve. 8 skills in total. The first tier contained one-handed sword, insight, balance, and Godspeed reflexes. The second tier had dual blades and solo player. The third tier had only strategy fiend, and the top 4th tier featured light of resolve. The pyramid structure was clear. To unlock higher tier skills, you had to raise the lower tier skills to level 2. Every skill had 5 levels: level 1, novice; level 2, proficient; level 3, skilled; level 4, expert; level 5, master. Right now, Takashi Nakai could only activate one skill. One-handed sword. Seeing it light up in white, he calmed down. Well, every tall building starts from the ground. One step at a time. Just as he reached to activate one-handed sword, he hesitated. Hey, system. He frowned at the skill tree. I remember Garito had more skills than this. As a true otaku, Kai was confident in his memory. Garito's elaborate sword techniques weren't listed here at all. Earlier, he was too excited to notice. Now, something felt off. What about Vorpal Strike? No answer. Sonic Leap? Still no response. Horizontal Square? Deadly Sins? Starburst Stream? Eclipse? He listed off several signature and ultimate techniques, then muttered, "Don't tell me none of these count as Black Swordsman inheritance? This system cultivates class inheritors, not class clones. The exclusive skill tree only includes core passive skills. Active techniques must be learned by the host through training. No shortcuts, so basically, you just don't provide active skills, right? Host may choose to reject system training and forego activating the skill tree. Was it his imagination, or did the system's tone just gain a hint of sass? Whatever. Kai mocked it mentally but wouldn't give up the inheritance. Passive skills were still skills. And the system had a point. Gyarados' techniques were amazing, but they belonged to him. Copying them might feel cool at first, but Kai wouldn't be himself anymore. He wasn't some wannabe clone. If Gyarados could pull it off, so could he, and maybe one day, he'd even surpass him. Or so he told himself. Truth was, if given the choice, who wouldn't want to turn into Superman overnight? This system was so damn stingy. Might as well call it passive skill inheritance system instead. Having recovered from his roller coaster of emotions, Kai sighed and tapped the skill. Congratulations, host. You have successfully activated the Black Swordsman exclusive skill tree. Skill, One-Handed Sword, has been lit. Current level, level 1. Keep it up and strive to unlock new class inheritances. Class inheritance officially activated. Trial task countdown begins. Remaining time, 59 days 23:59 and 54 seconds. As the messages appeared, the One-Handed Sword icon turned gold, with a small level 1-inch floating below. Above the tree, a blood-red countdown began ticking. 59:23:59:46. Staring at the timer, Kai's lips tightened. His expression darkened. So it starts. He'd already prepared for this and accepted that death might come. But seeing the timer drop second by second brought real pressure. It felt like a massive hand had gripped his chest. He didn't fear death, he'd died once already. In fact, he now cherished life more than ever. But the real pressure wasn't fear of death. It was the unknown. What kind of trial could be worthy of the word system? What happens if I fail? If the host fails the trial in any form, including but not limited to death, the system will erase all traces of the host's existence and search for a new candidate. I see. He smiled bitterly. This system was like a strict teacher offering great benefits, but drop the ball once and you're abandoned. No mercy. Takashi Nakai wondered if getting such a system was luck or misfortune. Sighing at his fate, he glanced back at the One-Handed Sword icon. As he focused, a line of text appeared. One-Handed Sword level 1, 5000, slightly increases understanding of sword techniques and basic proficiency with one-handed swords. While wielding a sword, slight all-stat boost, slightly enhanced battle instinct, slightly higher dodge chance against sword attacks, and slightly increased crit rate during sword skill use. All of them are slight increases? He frowned but quickly relaxed. Well, it was only level 1. What did he expect? The real test would be actual combat. Unfortunately, he was broke and swordless. The few bills in his pocket were worthless here. Not even enough to buy a leek, much less a blade. He needed a sword fast. As he spaced out in front of the interface, a certain bouncy, twin-tailed lily goddess suddenly appeared at the end of the street. Kai's eyes widened. Hestia? That small figure, the twin tails swaying with each hop. There was no doubt it was her. That signature ribbon. That ridiculously revealing outfit. No one else in Orario had such unorthodox taste. What was that phrase again? Watching her bounce away, twin tails swinging, Kai suddenly recalled an old saying. Twin tails are the best. Wait, no, you search high and low, only to find it effortlessly. He'd been worrying about how to find Hestia and Belle. Now, they walked right up to him. Ha! This must be fate. Straightening his suit, slapping his cheeks, Takashi Nakai put on his most radiant and friendly smile. He took a bold step forward and called out loudly, Goddess. Please wait. Wait a moment. Chapter 3, Obedient Now, Don't Dream. A loser will always be a loser. The labyrinth city Orario. The noise of the day faded. The street was now deserted. The night air carried a coolness that seeped into the skin. On the dried-out pond outside the slums, fireflies chased each other, glowing in the dark. The stone pavement was white and damp, with soft green moss growing between every gap. Goddess. Wait. Please wait. Hearing the shout from behind, Hestia paused slightly and looked around. There didn't seem to be any of her fellow gods nearby who usually teased her about her height. So, someone was calling out to her? That was rare. Though she was a god and far superior to mortals, Hestia wasn't all that famous among the gods. Even in the epics, the descriptions about her weren't exactly flattering. The poor goddess, the virgin goddess, the lily goddess. So, hearing someone call her goddess with such respectful tone actually made Hestia smile. And she made up her mind. She'd been going around these past few days looking for someone willing to join her familia. Unfortunately, no adventurers took her seriously. She was just a no-name poverty goddess to them. But if this kid didn't have a familia yet, then she'd invite him to be her first familia member. Thinking that, Hestia's smile grew wider. Her eyes curved into little crescents of joy. She turned around, the soles of her sandals tapping crisply on the stone pavement. She turned and placed her hands behind her back, looking expectantly at the person who had just called out to her. Not good. Not good, not good, not good, not good. Takashi Nakai stood frozen in place, his face stiff with a frozen smile, his heartbeat thudding loudly in his ears. His cheeks were heating up? Yeah, based on past experience, he was probably blushing down to his ears by now. Come on, man. Have some dignity. Show some backbone. Though he'd seen this virgin lily goddess countless times in anime, even seen H-gens where she was the main heroine, nothing could have prepared him for the real thing. That feeling, like his heart was being clenched and his whole body electrified, was so intense it caught him off guard. Her looks and body were pretty much the same as in the anime. If anything, she was just more vivid and lifelike. But it wasn't her face that made Kai lose it. Sure, Hestia's appearance was flawless, combining childlike charm with mature curves, but even that paled next to the aura she radiated. How could he describe it? Noble, sacred, untouchable like a divine treasure. Pure and clear, making one instinctively want to worship. This must be what they call divine presence. And when that divine presence combined with her cute looks and radiant smile, Takashi Nakai could say with certainty, in his 23 years of life, he'd never been so utterly smitten. Are all gods this unreasonable? Just seeing them in person could leave you lost in their overwhelming divine aura. Suddenly, he had a new respect for the people of Orario. They interacted with beings like this and still kept their sanity. That took some serious mental fortitude. Gee goddess. Despite the overwhelming pressure in his chest, Kai's mind remained clear. He fought hard not to let himself do anything impulsive. Looking into Hestia's eyes, he carefully watched her expression. If gods could sense that he was a stowaway from another world, Hestia would definitely react. If he saw even the slightest sign of suspicion in her eyes, he would leave Orario that very night. To his relief, Hestia didn't seem suspicious. Her gaze was full of expectation, which made Kai a little flustered. That look. What did it mean? Should he say something? Or maybe do something? As he stood awkwardly under her gaze, trying to figure it out, Hestia suddenly spoke. My name is Hestia. What's yours? As she asked, she bounced toward him on light feet, hands behind her back, and blinked with a bright, cheerful smile. She stopped right in front of him, waiting for an answer. What was with this attitude? This unexplained friendliness? Since when was he this popular? Or could it be that the Black Swordsman class also came with the Harem King perk? As her sweet fragrance filled his nose, Kai looked into her pale blue eyes, then his gaze involuntarily drifted downward. Past her youthful cheeks, moist lips, the light blue ribbon at her collar, the delicate collarbones. Goddess, I'm. Though stunned by this lily goddess's sheer force, Kai still managed to croak out, my name is Takashi Nakai. As he spoke, he took 2 steps back. He wasn't sure if Hestia had done it on purpose, but whether she was trying to get close or not, Kai wanted some distance. Otherwise, he might just fall again into the intoxicating trap of her divine presence. Takashi Nakai? That's a weird name, pretty rare. Are you from outside Orario? Yes, goddess. Seeing that she wasn't pressing closer, Kai let out a faint nostalgic sigh and said slowly, I come from a country far to the east. Yep, classic vague answer from Xianxia novels. If you asked him where he came from, the answer was always, the east. If not that, he'd pretend to have amnesia, but Kai didn't feel like playing the innocent type, so he just kept things vague. The east, huh? Hestia nodded thoughtfully, then smiled brightly again. Her eyes sparkled, and her expression turned a little sly like a fox ready to pounce on a chicken. Hey, you goddess lady. Could you stop looking at me like that? I'll scream, seriously. Feeling uneasy under her gaze, Kai was about to make an excuse to leave, when her voice rang out again. Then, Takashi Nakai. Will you join the Hestia Familia and become my family? Huh? Kai was stunned by the completely unexpected invitation. He'd just been worrying about how to join a familia and get a god's blessing. Now, after barely a minute of talking, this virgin lily goddess was already inviting him? This had to be a dream. Takashina K, would you like to join the Hestia Familia and become my family starting today? Seeing that he hadn't responded, Hestia repeated her question, thinking maybe he hadn't heard clearly. Okay. Not a dream. Hearing her words so clearly, Kai's feelings were all over the place. So, my popular phase, 23 years late, has finally arrived? What do I do? Kinda wanna cry right now. Though his heart was practically dancing, he kept his face cool and aloof. This is what they call aura, right? Very pleased with his composure, Kai nodded calmly and gave a soft, accepting her offer. And Hestia? She immediately jumped with joy, hopping around like a child, cheering loudly. Yay! Yay! Kai-kun said yes. Watching her bounce with delight, Kai's lips curved into a cocky smile. In his mind, he was already seeing his future multiverse-scale harem palace. Yay! Finally someone joined my familia. Now those other gods won't laugh at me anymore. Yay! 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 Just as Kai was getting lost in fantasy, Hestia's words snapped him out of it. Wait, goddess, what do you mean finally someone joined? What about Belle? Belle? Who's Belle? Hearing the question, Hestia tilted her head. Kai-kun, you're the first member of the Hestia Familia. Who's this Belle person? Your friend? No, nothing. Please forget I said anything. Kai's soaring spirits crashed into a wall. His body slumped like a deflated balloon. Belle Cradle hadn't met Hestia yet. Which meant Kai had simply met her before Belle did. Now it all made sense. No wonder Hestia had been so enthusiastic, he was just enjoying the treatment Belle would have gotten. Probably anyone who showed interest would have been welcomed like this. So this so-called popular phase. Why did he suddenly feel so empty? Everything had gone so smoothly. His identity was safe. He'd successfully joined the Familia. He even earned Hestia's favor. But why? Did his heart ache just a little? Kai-kun, are you alright? Having calmed down a bit, Hestia noticed a lonely look on Kai's face. She didn't know what had happened, but in that moment, something inside her awakened a maternal instinct. She walked over, stood on her tiptoes, and gently patted his head. As she patted, she whispered softly, There. It's okay. I'll take you home. Looking down at her kind, motherly smile, Kai suddenly had no impure thoughts at all. So this is what motherly love feels like. Bullshit. I've got something to say and I swear I'm gonna say it out loud, damn it. Chapter 4, that's right, I was once a swordsman beneath the ruined chapel in the slums. What was originally meant to be a storage cellar had, at some unknown point, been converted into a living space. The small basement room had little more than a rickety wooden table, a barely usable sofa, and a bed piled with layers upon layers of thick bedding. Aside from that, there wasn't much furniture to speak of. Still, while it seemed a bit shabby, the compact layout gave the space a cozy atmosphere. It actually felt a bit like home. This is at our Hestia Familia's base. Pushing aside the heavy stone statue covering the basement entrance, Hestia hopped lightly down the steps and spread her arms toward the room, beaming like a child proudly showing off a toy. From now on, you'll be living here with me, Kai-kun. It's a bit small, but as long as we work hard, things will get better. As he descended the stairs, Kai-kun looked around at the basement's setup. It was practically identical to what he remembered from the anime, and he couldn't help but be amazed. It really is exactly the same. What is? Oh no, it's nothing. I mean, it's amazing, really. Having let that slip, Kai immediately grew alert. Before Hestia could probe further, he hurriedly changed the subject. The chapel above looked so run down, I didn't expect the basement to be so different. Did you set all this up yourself, goddess? HMPH, of course I did. Hands on her hips, Hestia declared proudly, even though the furniture's a little old, it's actually pretty comfy to live in. As she spoke, she plopped down on the bed and patted the soft mattress. Kai-kun, come over here. Gulp. A young girl goddess with those proportions sat defenselessly on the bed, flashing a bright and cheerful smile while calling him over. No one else was around. It was nighttime. Just the two of them, a man and a woman. Even though he knew that kind of thing wasn't going to happen, Kai-kun still couldn't help where his thoughts went for a moment. This was the tragic flaw of all men. Moments later, Kai lay down in the middle of the bed, and Hestia straddled his lower back. As she lifted up his shirt with some effort, she muttered in complaint, Kai-kun, don't you find these clothes too tight? Tight? Not really. Turning his head slightly to glance at Hestia sitting behind him, Kai spoke casually while feeling the soft warmth pressing against his backside. Maybe it's just that I've gotten used to wearing them. When the system transferred him across dimensions, it had reconstructed his body based on his physical state before he was roasted alive in the fire. Not only were his physical state identical, But even the clothes he was wearing were exactly the same, a tailored business suit that fit snugly. Even if you're used to it, it's still not okay. Wearing something that tight in the dungeon is a no-go. It's not suited for combat and could get in the way. This is serious business, Kai-kun. I get it. After struggling for a while, Hestia finally managed to roll up his suit jacket and expose his back. Kai-kun, are you ready? She asked seriously, plucking a thin needle from a small basket beside the bed. Go ahead, goddess. I'm ready. Gulping nervously, Takashi Nakai felt a mix of tension and anticipation. In Orario, the unique power system was the Falna, granted by the gods. It allowed ordinary people to surpass their natural limits and grow rapidly through combat and dungeon monster kills to accumulate Excelia. Was he really about to receive that power? Even though he'd inherited the Black Swordsman's skills, his base stats were still capped at 10 points. After all, the inheritance didn't include bloodline changes, he was still an ordinary human. That was his limit. Now, with Hestia's Falna, he could break free from human limitations. How could he not be excited? As he lay there, Hestia pricked her finger. A drop of her blood fell onto Kai's back. Like a stone sinking into a lake, the drop didn't soak into his skin but instead turned into a gentle glow, rippling outward from the point of contact. Moments later, glowing white letters began to appear on his back. Kai couldn't see the change, but he clearly felt a cool stream of energy flowing from his back through his entire body. Compared to the system's reinforcement, this wasn't as sudden or forceful, but it was soothing. Every part the flow passed through felt like it was being reborn. But before he could enjoy the sensation for long, Hestia suddenly exclaimed in shock. This is... What's wrong, Lady Hestia? Her reaction made Kai panic. After all, he was a dimensional trespasser, essentially undocumented in this world. He was genuinely worried Hestia might discover his secret during such close contact. But fortunately, the system had done a great job masking his identity. Hestia's shock wasn't due to any hidden truth, it was because of what she saw on his back. Strength, endurance, dexterity, agility. All your basic stats are at S rank except for magic. Kai-kun, are you really just a regular human? Probably. Realizing her surprise came from his stats, Kai breathed a sigh of relief and relaxed. He added, back in my hometown, I used to do a lot of heavy labor. Maybe that's why I'm stronger than average. That's not just stronger than average. Hestia clearly didn't buy it. While tracing the glowing characters on his back, she huffed, even at just level 1, an S rank stat is already the limit for normal humans. How hard would someone have to work to train themselves to this level? Her tone grew stern, and she began lightly smacking his back as if to scold him. Kai could only smile bitterly. All his stats had come from the starter package. How was he supposed to explain that? No matter how much she pressed, Kai refused to say a word. He just lay there like a dead fish and even closed his eyes to focus on the sensation of warmth and softness on his lower back. Eventually, realizing he wouldn't spill anything, Hestia gave up. She went back to reading the rest of his Falna. Magic. 0. Magic slot is empty. Skills. Huh? When she got to the skills section, her eyebrows twitched. Her face turned from puzzled to shocked. Then she gasped again. What is it now? Startled, Kai turned his head and asked. Skills. You have a skill. Staring at the glowing characters in the skill column, Hestia was overwhelmed with excitement. Bringing Kai into her familia had been the best decision ever. Skill, one-handed sword. Sword mastery born of instinct. Enhances attributes when wielding a sword, sharpens combat intuition, and reduces sword-based damage taken. Kai-kun, were you a swordsman before? I guess you could say that. Thick-skinned, Kai nodded in affirmation. I was a swordsman, my ass. More like a sword simp. Even he felt a little guilty for lying. He figured he'd better start training with a sword soon, otherwise, if his cover got blown, it'd be way too embarrassing. After completing the Falna and finishing the assessment, Hestia pushed herself off his back and sat on the bed, hugging her legs, beaming with joy. The warmth and elasticity that had pressed against his back now vanished, leaving Kai feeling a bit disappointed. Still, he smiled at the cheerful goddess and asked, You seem really happy, Lady Hestia. Did something good happen? Of course. She gave him a big thumbs up. With you in the Familia, our lives are definitely going to improve. We might even surpass Loki Familia. After all, you're the only one in all of Orario with 4 S-ranked attributes and a skill at level 1. Her gaze turned fiery, like a starving gourmet staring at a feast. The strongest in Loki Familia is that A-something girl. Her title is Sword Princess. Since you're a swordsman, Kai-kun, you need to become even stronger than her and take that title for yourself. Sword Princess? Kai felt a little lost. Even if he could overpower Ace Wallenstein in the future, why would he want that title? Sword Princess? That's for girls. He'd prefer Sword Saint or Sword Master. Hestia, lost in her beautiful dreams, didn't seem to notice his confusion. Hugging her knees, she giggled like a carefree schoolgirl. When morning comes, we'll go to Babel and buy you proper combat gear. Oh. And a sword too, since you're a swordsman. Lying down on the sofa with his hands behind his head, Takashi Nakai listened to her chatter while silently calling up the system interface. Name, Takashi Nakai, race, human, profession, adventurer level 1, 1000, Hestia familia, age, 23, height, 176 centimeter, weight, 64 kilogram, spirit, 10, 10, strength, 10, 10, agility, 10, 10, endurance, 10, 10, constitution, 10, 10, class inheritance, black swordsman, energy, 215.11, with Hestia familia's blessing and Gyarados inheritance. So much had already changed in just half a day. And from here on, he'd only grow stronger. System, what would happen if one day I inherited every possible class? Host, please don't worry about hypotheticals. The worlds are endless, the realms too numerous to count. The number of class inheritances is infinite. Even if you mastered all that currently exist, there would always be new legendary paths to follow. The way of inheritance has no end, no end. Huh? Takashi Nakai didn't respond further. He couldn't fathom how vast the multiverse really was. He had no idea where the path of inheritance might lead or whether it even had a destination. But he did know one thing. He liked this life. To live inside his favorite anime, to meet and influence the characters, to alter their destinies and grow stronger with each step. This, to the once frustrated Takashi Nakai, was the perfect life. Good night, Orario. Chapter 5, Working? That's never gonna happen. Tower of Babel was a mythical structure said to connect the mortal realm with the heavens. As for whether one could really ascend to the heavens through it, Takashi Nakai had no idea. But standing before this towering cylindrical building that pierced the clouds, he couldn't help but feel a sense of awe. Kai-kun, you're from outside the city, so you probably don't know this tower is what links the US gods in heaven with the mortals here in the lower realm. Holding Takashi Nakai's hand, Hestia walked beside him, explaining the common knowledge of Orario as they approached the entrance of Babel Tower. Yawn with faint dark circles under his eyes, Takashi Nakai yawned loudly. Hestia had dragged him off the sofa before dawn, shoved some cold water into his stomach for breakfast, and then led him into the early morning light toward Tower of Babel. He didn't particularly mind getting up early, but this early? The streets were still deserted. Would they really find any open stores at this hour? He was skeptical. Still, seeing how energized Hestia was, he kept his mouth shut, shook off the drowsiness in his head, and silently followed the perky little goddess into Tower of Babel. There was no denying it, this iconic building of Orario was absolutely awe-inspiring. Unlike how it appeared in the anime, it was only upon stepping inside that one could truly grasp its scale. Just one of the entrance archways stood over 3 meters tall. On the first floor, the golden tiled platform stretched across an area equivalent to several soccer fields, with dozens of massive jade columns supporting the structure. Each column was so thick it would take over 10 people holding hands to circle one. Impressive, right? Standing next to him, Hestia beamed with pride as she took in Takashi Nakai's amazed expression. Puffing up her chest, she added smugly, this tower's design was something we gods in the heavens discussed for a long time before settling on. It really is impressive. Kai nodded, then added, but wasn't the tower built by mortals? Well. Yes. Hey, how do you know that? Hestia blinked at him in surprise. While it wasn't exactly a secret how Tower of Babel was built, for someone who claimed to be from outside Orario to know the details so clearly was more than a little suspicious. Realizing he'd blurted out too much again, Takashi Nakai could only chuckle awkwardly and wave his hand. Just rumors I picked up. Rumors, that's all. Really just rumors? Hestia narrowed her pale blue eyes and stared at him until he started to sweat under her gaze. Finally, she huffed and turned away. Fine, fine. Like you'd actually answer if I asked. You were the same last night too. Seems like you've got even more secrets than I, a goddess, do. Please don't tease me, Lady Hestia. Relieved that she didn't press further, Kai stayed quiet this time, afraid he'd slip up again. He kept his eyes scanning the interior of Babel Tower while sealing his lips tightly. Seeing him clam up, Hestia rolled her eyes but continued explaining on her own. The construction work was indeed done by mortals from the lower world. But the original idea and design came from us gods. So technically, Tower of Babel was built under divine instruction. That's why the top floors are where the gods live. As she spoke, she led Kai toward a lift platform. Right below the divine residences is the guild, established by the city's administrators to manage familia and adventurers. Below that are commercial floors with shops. Store owners pay rent to the guild at regular intervals, but having a shop inside Babel is worth it. Takashi Nakai followed her on to the lift. He had no idea how it operated, but as soon as it detected passengers, it began to ascend slowly and steadily. Soon, they reached their destination. Stepping off, Kai was surprised to see that the stores on either side of the corridor were actually open, with warm lights shining from inside. Did none of these shopkeepers need sleep? Sensing his doubt, Hestia explained, these shops never close. They operate 24/7, so adventurers who return from the dungeon at night can restock or change equipment. The staff work in rotating day and night shifts. I see. Kai nodded, then suddenly asked, but how does Lady Hestia know so much? You've never been into the dungeon, and until recently you didn't have any familiar members. At that, Hestia's smile froze, and she lowered her head, sounding a little embarrassed. I used to work here, when things got really tough. That jogged his memory. Right, the anime had mentioned that Hestia once took part-time jobs to survive. Smiling brightly, Kai reassured her, don't worry, Lady Hestia. Now that I've joined your familia, I won't let you live that kind of life ever again. Kai-kun. Tears welled up in her eyes as she looked at him, deeply moved by his promise. Bringing you into my familia was the best decision ever. Just a few kind words were enough to make her tear up, that spoke volumes about what kind of hardship she must have endured before. A goddess brought to such a state. No wonder no one had joined her familia before. With such a thick aura of poverty surrounding her, who'd want to share in her misery? Well, except for that white-haired kid Belle. That guy was naivety incarnate. Because of his unexpectedly powerful words, Takashi Nakai now found himself being dragged around by an emotional Hestia as they roamed through all kinds of weapon and armor shops. I have to find only the best equipment for Kai-kun. But even if you say so, Lady Hestia. Takashi Nakai wasn't trying to dampen Hestia's enthusiasm, but every time he thought about how poor she really was, he couldn't help but worry what kind of weapon she could actually afford. What's that supposed to mean, Kai-kun? Don't underestimate me. Ah, no, ow 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 ow. Seeing the doubt on Kai's face, Hestia raised an eyebrow and stretched out her slender white arm to give him a firm smack on the back. Never underestimate the value of a true deity's name, Kai-kun. Just wait and see. Yes, Lady Hestia. Taking into account the slap he just received, Kai wisely refrained from showing any more skepticism. He nodded obediently and followed behind her. Even though, in terms of height, his 176 centimeters frame had a whole head and a half over her, it felt awkward being pulled along by her like a child. Hestia, however, didn't seem to find it strange at all. Her delicate, soft fingers gently held his rough hand, leading him through shops that grew more luxurious the deeper they went. Lady Hestia. Are you really sure about this? As they passed a boutique adorned with pure violet transparent glass, Kai happened to glance through the display window and spotted a crimson spear at the center of a weapon rack. Underneath it, on the price tag, was a string of zeros. Tens, hundreds, thousands, 10,000s. 87 million. To be precise, it was 87,400,000. He didn't know exactly how much purchasing power this currency had in Orario, but just looking at that long string of digits made his head spin. At this price, even selling himself wouldn't be enough to afford it. And what's worse, as they kept walking, Kai gradually realized, the closer the shops were to the elevator, the cheaper the goods were. The further in they went, the more the prices shot up exponentially. But Hestia just kept walking inward. Was a god's name really worth that much? Or was Hestia just putting on airs? Thinking this, Kai couldn't help but sigh and press a hand to his forehead. Alright, we're here, Kai-kun. Let's go in. Hestia finally stopped in front of a shop at the far end of the floor. Actually, calling it a shop didn't do it justice. This place was massive. It looked like 4 large stores had their walls knocked down and merged into one giant storefront. A deep black stone sign hung above, etched with an unknown name. Hephaestus Familia Exclusive Store. This really can't be good. Kai stared up at the name and swallowed hard. He suddenly grabbed Hestia's arm and tried to turn around. Lady Hestia, I understand you want to maintain our familia's dignity, but just looking is enough. Going in would be a disaster. Just looking and not buying such a bumpkin move would definitely get them mocked by the staff. As Kai tried to drag her away, Hestia struggled to break free. What are you talking about? Let go. Let go, Kai-kun. No way. I don't want to embarrass ourselves in public. Please, Lady Hestia, let's go back. Oh. Let go of me, Kai-kun. Don't you trust me at all? This isn't about trust anymore, this is about not becoming a public laughingstock. I don't care about my reputation, but you're a goddess. You should at least care about your dignity. So you still don't believe in me? I'm sorry, Lady Hestia, but I really don't see a reason to trust you here. Ho? You dare speak that way to a goddess? I'm seriously getting angry, Kai. Even if you're mad, I'm still not letting go. Will you let go or not? No. Still not? When I say no, I mean it. Their argument continued as time ticked by. Eventually, adventurers started gathering around to watch, curious about the scene. All kinds of strange looks were cast their way. In the end, unable to endure the public shame, Kai finally relented and released her hand. Huh? Didn't you say you weren't letting go? Hestia crossed her arms and puffed out her chest with pride. After a dramatic bounce, she turned away with a smug tone. Kai-kun, it's your first day in the Familia, and you're already not listening to me? Kai was at a loss for words. He rubbed his head in frustration and finally drooped like a deflated balloon, bowing his head and apologizing. I'm sorry, Lady Hestia. I was wrong. HMPH. Don't think an apology is enough to get you off the hook. She still turned her head away in a tsundere huff, but her lips were twitching, clearly holding back laughter. Then she walked toward the store, her cute twin ponytails bouncing rhythmically. If you want me to forgive your rude behavior, then you better show me some real effort in the future. Now come inside. Watching Hestia walk toward this den of luxury, Kai opened his mouth but said nothing. He finally followed her in with a heavy heart. Welcome, honorable adventurer. As soon as they passed the threshold, two petite bunny-eared girls bowed in greeting from either side. I brought my child here to purchase weapons and armor. Go call your store owner. Hestia nodded at them politely, her tone now completely serious, no longer the cheerful fool she usually acted like. Standing next to her, Kai was taken aback by her sudden shift. As expected of a goddess who had lived for ages, her aura was undeniable. Shortly after the bunny girls relayed the message, a mature woman wearing thin gold-rimmed glasses came out from the back, holding a green crystal ball the size of a basketball. Hestia-sama, what an honor. How may our humble store serve you today? I'd like to buy weapons and armor. Any recommendations? After casually swiping her god seal across the crystal ball, Hestia turned to Kai. What kind of equipment do you want? Just a regular one-handed sword is fine. As for armor, thinking about Gyarado's cool aesthetic, Kai shook his head. Too much armor would slow me down, so I'd prefer not to wear any. But if possible, I'd like a black coat that can conceal my presence or at least mask my aura. Also, the sword should be black too. Black coat and elucidator, the signature of the black swordsman. Maximum cool points. Understood. Please wait a moment while I make arrangements. The woman bowed slightly, cradled the crystal carefully, and went to prepare. That's all it takes. Watching her go, Kai felt a wave of nausea. Was being a god really this convenient? Then why was Hestia living in a church basement, struggling to make ends meet? HMPH, you think a goddess isn't worth anything? Seeing his shock, Hestia sneered. Just from that one god seal I left, I could buy every weapon and piece of armor in this entire store. She wasn't exaggerating. For gods, a god seal was basically their line of credit. With her status, Hestia could theoretically walk out with everything in Hephaestus' shop without paying a single vallus. Of course, the downside was, she'd probably ruin her relationship with Hephaestus forever. It was just like using a credit card. If you don't pay it back, your account gets frozen. Hestia was now spending on credit using her divine reputation. Eventually, she would have to repay the full amount. If not, her seal would remain here, and it might even end up in Hephaestus' hands. And then she'd become the laughingstock of the gods. That was why the store owner handled the crystal ball so carefully. To mortals, the god seal was sacred. Kai had no idea what any of this meant. He just thought gods had it easy, leave a stamp and take whatever you want. Hestia didn't explain. She just looked at the boy who had joined her familia and promised her a better life, smiling gently. You better work hard, Kai-kun. Otherwise, the debt I've just taken on might take 200 years of labor under Hephaestus to pay off. Chapter 6, Forging the Sword into Bone. After stepping into the shop with the crystal orb in hand, Kai didn't have to wait long. The proprietress quickly returned, carrying a large dark yellow leather bag. These are currently the highest quality one-handed swords in our store. As you requested, every one of them is entirely black, from blade to hilt. With some effort, she placed the bag on the ground and smiled sweetly, full of mature charm. Then she untied the bag's opening. As the blades clinked against one another, a crisp metallic sound rang out. Dear customer, please feel free to pick whichever sword you like. Inside the open bag, more than a dozen black one-handed swords reflected a cold, sharp gleam under the light. Compared to the other weapons on display in the shop, swords, spears, axes, halberds, hooks, forks, bows, and shields, these clearly stood out. They had a refined, first-rate quality, clearly top-tier weapons forged to perfection. Takashi Nakai stared at them for a long time, hesitating. Although he had inherited the Black Swordsman class, only one skill, one-handed sword, had been unlocked so far, and it was still at the lowest level, level 1. He had no clue how to judge a sword's quality. As for using a clear and pure swordman heart and trusting his instincts, maybe when he had unlocked every skill in the Black Swordsman tree, he might develop something like that. But for now, that was just wishful thinking. Kai-kun? Hestia asked, puzzled. What's wrong? Are none of the swords to your liking? She had no doubt in his talent for swordsmanship after all. He awakened the one-handed sword skill the moment he received her blessing. She assumed the weapons just weren't good enough to satisfy him. No. I was just thinking about something, he said, waving a hand dismissively. Turning back to the bag of swords, still unsure what to pick, he stopped thinking altogether and stepped forward. Bending down, he reached in and pulled out one at random. The hilt, wrapped in black leather, felt warm and snug in his palm. Even though Kai wasn't an expert, he could tell it was a good sword. It just felt right. And his body's instincts wouldn't lie. Looks like I got lucky. Smiling with satisfaction, Kai said, I'll take this one. But just as he tightened his grip on the hilt and prepared to stand up, congratulations, host. You have obtained one-handed straight sword, black, rating, 53, out of 100, condition met for triggering Black Swordsman talent, swordbone, talent activated. Beginning swordbone synthesis, a string of system messages echoed in his mind, but Kai didn't notice any of them. At that moment, the world had narrowed to just him and the sword in his hand. It was a good sword. And good swords have sword spirits. Born from the sword, yet beyond it. Sometimes like a close friend, sometimes like family, sometimes a bitter enemy, sometimes a lifelong partner. In a single instant, all the complexity of life, the warmth, the sorrow, the struggles was carved into his bones with sword intent as the brush. Kai was still Kai. But as he stood there, slowly straightening his spine with the black sword in hand, something had changed. The ordinary, unremarkable air about him vanished. He now stood like a celestial swordsman, sharp and blinding. Just looking at him felt like being pierced by the edge of a divine blade. See customer. Everyone in the shop was trembling. Even the shop girls had turned pale and unsteady. Only the proprietress, a seasoned level 3 adventurer, managed to speak under the oppressive pressure. Sir. If you don't rein in your aura, my employees won't last much longer. She glanced at him again, only to be struck with the terrifying illusion that countless blades were piercing her from every direction. Her heart pounded violently, and she had to quickly avert her gaze. Too terrifying. This man. If just his aura was this overwhelming, how strong was he really? Level 4? Level 5? No, that wasn't it. She had seen the Sword Princess, a level 5 adventurer. That girl's presence was strong, yes, but I couldn't compare to this. Could he be the rumored level 7? A chill ran down her spine. She dared not imagine further and turned toward Hestia with reverence in her eyes. To have raised such a powerful familiar member. As expected of a deity. Hestia, the one being admired, was completely focused on Kai. She stood silently, bathing in his sword aura, her eyes shining. As expected of Kai. He's a true swordsman. A moment later, the swordbone formation synthesis. When Kai opened his eyes, 2 tears streamed silently down his face. Without wiping them away, he immediately called up the system and stared at the new notifications on the blue interface. Swordbone synthesis complete, rating, 53, out of 100, swordbone, condenses sword intent into the bones. Greatly enhances sword sense when wielding a blade. Gains permanent passive skill, sword pressure. If the sword's rating is lower than swordbone, weapon quality is significantly boosted. If sword rating exceeds swordbone will begin reconstruction, sword pressure, max, exerts a suppressive aura against all swordsmen below master rank. If target is stronger than the host, the higher the difference, the weaker the effect. Can be toggled on/off, 2 new skill icons, swordbone, and sword pressure, now flickered with silver light beside, one-handed sword, on the Black Swordsman's exclusive skill tree. Staring at them, Kai's hand trembled slightly around the hilt. This is it. I've made it. Sir, could you please turn off that aura? The proprietress asked again with a strained smile. The sword pressure still radiating from him made it hard to even breathe. Alright, sorry. Kai looked around and finally noticed that all the shop staff were cowering like he was some sort of wild beast. A few girls were even trembling. He quickly opened the system interface and toggled sword pressure off. As the intense aura faded, and Kai returned to the harmless appearance he had when he entered, the proprietress let out a long sigh and wiped the sweat from her brow. You really scared me, sir. I thought you were going to blow up the shop with that Torah. Startled by her reproachful look, Kai apologized quickly. Sorry, I just got a bit excited after finding such a great sword. Yes, got a bit excited. It wasn't a lie. The system had excitedly shaped his sword bone, after all. That afternoon. Dungeon, floor 2. Wearing a long black coat, Kai walked slowly down the corridor, his right hand resting lightly on the hilt of his black sword, staying alert to every movement. Listen carefully, Kai-kun. Hestia had warned him before he entered the dungeon. This isn't some kind of game. The moment you step in, the monsters mark you. They'll spawn endlessly, feel no pain, no fear of death, and throw themselves at you to take your life. Even with your current stats, you might manage against the first 10 floors monsters, but be careful. If you get surrounded, not even I can save you, even if I break the rules and use my divine powers. Those words remained clear in Kai's mind. That's why he didn't charge forward recklessly, despite having maxed out human stats. Instead, he explored cautiously, step by step. In this dungeon he had only seen in anime. From the first floor to the second, the surrounding walls turned deep blue, dimly glowing in the low dungeon light. It gave off a stifling atmosphere. Maybe he was lucky he'd already made it a third of the way through floor 2, and still hadn't encountered a single monster. Only the echo of his own footsteps filled the space. Maybe the monsters aren't as common as Hestia made them out to be. Just as that thought crossed his mind, gosh. A wet, squelching sound echoed up ahead, like something being forced out of a damp pipe. Ra-arg. Then came a screeching voice like sandpaper grinding, or a child wailing at full volume. Goblin. Kai stared at the silhouette rising ahead and instantly recalled the monster encyclopedia he'd read at a guild. Appears on floors 1 to 4. Individually weak, but often in groups. Annoying, disgusting little creatures, goblins. As he identified the enemy, he tightened his grip on the hilt and slowly drew his pitch-black blade. Shing. The cold metal sliding from the scabbard helped calm his quickening heartbeat. So, this is battle? For someone who'd barely been in a real fight his entire life, it was a hard question to answer. Even though he had inherited the Black Swordsman class and had skills like one-handed sword, sword bone, and sword pressure, all of them were passive. None taught him how to actually fight. There were no sword insights or auto combos. Even with the sword in hand, he felt lost. The only thing giving him courage was the raw strength he had gained from the system, his 5 core attributes, all maxed at human limits. A single goblin's strength and speed were barely better than a 10-year-old's, maybe 3 or 4 points. Compared to Kai's 10 physical stats, even without skill, he should be able to dominate them easily. At least. That's what he thought. Chapter 7, The Collapse of Reason. In the dim corridor of the dungeon, Takashi Nakai gripped the hilt of his sword tightly. The black blade extended before him, facing off against a goblin just a short distance away. Gah! The goblin stared right back at him, clutching a crude club that resembled a spiked bat, its mouth emitting an ugly, low-pitched snarl. Compared to the image in the monster encyclopedia, this goblin's skin looked even darker. Its wrinkled green hide was mottled with gray patches. A small head, pointed ears, and strands of sticky drool hanging from its mouth. It perfectly embodied the word disgusting. But what caught Kai off guard was that this ugly, short goblin wasn't lunging at him immediately. Instead, it maintained a safe distance, its tiny bead-like eyes scanning up and down his body as if searching for something. What is it looking for? After exchanging stares for a while, Kai's brow furrowed as he suddenly had a realization. It was observing him. Gauging the difference in their strength. Looking for an opening, an opportunity to kill. Like a skilled hunter. You've got to be kidding me. A mere goblin, the weakest monster in the dungeon, was displaying that level of intelligence? Kai didn't want to believe it, but the scene before him left no room for denial. Even the weakest monsters in the dungeon had intelligence on par with humans. This is seriously messed up. On his very first encounter in the dungeon, he'd already run into something completely beyond his expectations. The pressure mounted rapidly. His right palm began to sweat. The corridor was deathly still, only the goblin's breathing broke the silence. This oppressive atmosphere made his anxiety build. Sure, goblins were supposedly weak, but now that he was facing one, it was proving much more difficult than he had imagined. And he was still a complete novice. No combat awareness, no experience fighting monsters, 0 across the board. Maybe he should have joined a more experienced party first? So, do I really have to fight? Overwhelmed with tension, chaotic thoughts filled Kai's head, and the idea of retreat crept in. And at that very moment of hesitation the goblin moved. It had caught his hesitation. There was the opening. Grah! With a piercing scream, the goblin launched itself at Kai, sprinting on all fours. It dragged the club behind it with its right hand, face twisted into a grotesque expression of ferocity. Kai had already been teetering. When the goblin suddenly attacked, his thoughts scattered into panic. It's coming. The goblin's charging? Wait. What do I do? Should I run? Block. That's right, block the attack. But how? With a sword? Then what? Counter? Dodge? While he was still lost in confusion, the goblin had already closed the distance. That horrifying face drew closer fast. Kai instinctively backed up and tripped over a rock. Ugh! Just as he fell, he heard the goblin's club slicing through the air above him. Looking up, he saw the goblin swinging the club down at full force. The goblin might not have been strong, but if that blow landed on a human skull, it would be fatal. This goblin was serious. It was really trying to kill him. Frozen in place, Kai's pupils shrank. His body trembled. If I don't do something now, I'm going to die. Grrrr! The goblin roared in rage as its first swing missed. It spun the club and brought it down again, harder. The club loomed in Kai's vision, magnifying rapidly. The whoosh of displaced air sent his scattered thoughts flying away, leaving nothing but a blank void. Am I going to die? Killed by the weakest monster in the dungeon? What a pathetic way to go. In that infinitesimally short instant, as the goblin's club was about to strike him, Kai moved. As if by reflex, his right arm snapped upward. Clang! A streak of black light flashed in the corridor. The next moment, warm, foul-smelling liquid splattered onto Kai's face. Blood. Looking up at his raised right hand, he saw it gripping his sword tightly. A trail of blood ran down the blade, soaking his palm. Did I do this? Thud. The goblin collapsed backward in front of him. A long sword wound ran from the lower right of its belly to the upper left of its chest. Dark red blood poured out, along with its intestines. The nauseating stench filled the corridor. Lowering his shaking right hand, Kai stared at the goblin's corpse. Moments ago, this goblin had been a threat looming over him. And now, it was just a lifeless body. If he hadn't struck when he did, if he hadn't instinctively lashed out with his sword, would he be the one lying here now, guts spilling out? Still sitting on the ground, Kai suddenly felt a chill run through his entire body. Even with his strength stat at 10, the sword in his hand suddenly felt heavy. So heavy he could barely lift it. Listen closely, Kai. The dungeon is no game. From the moment you enter, the monsters are after you. They'll keep coming without fear, without hesitation to take your life. Hestia's warning echoed in his mind once more. This time, he truly understood the weight behind it. Battle. Death. These were the dungeon's eternal themes. Romantic encounters? Anyone entering the dungeon hoping for that? Most of them had already become wandering souls. Only those prepared, those with resolve, deserved to survive here. Gurgle. As Kai sat dazed, the ground beneath him began to shift. The once solid rock softened like a swamp. In seconds, it swallowed the goblin's corpse, and even the bloodstains vanished without a trace. If it weren't for the goblin's blood still staining Takashi no Kai's body, no one would have guessed that a battle had just taken place here. The loser in a dungeon fight doesn't even have the right to leave behind a corpse. That's the true, brutal nature of the dungeon. Shuddering, Kai exhaled a breath of foul air and pushed himself up from the ground using his sword. He had successfully killed that goblin, but he was still inside the dungeon, so there was no time to rest. Moreover, whether it was intuition or something else, he felt like something was watching him. Grrrgh. Just as Kai steadied himself, the wall of the cave in front of him suddenly writhed. Several black shadows tumbled out, taking the form of humanoid monsters. Earth imps. Creatures that, like goblins, ranked among the weakest monsters on the first few dungeon floors. This time, Kai didn't hesitate. Raising his sword, he took the initiative and charged at the monsters. Kai. Even though these earth imps had just been born, killing was already instinctive to them. They screeched and raised their sharp claws, lunging at Kai without hesitation. Die, you monsters. Reflected in his pupils were the grotesque, ugly faces of the earth imps. Kai didn't pause. He swung his sword down without mercy. Though he knew nothing about proper combat techniques, the 10 points in all his attributes gave him an overwhelming edge. Whether in speed, strength, or even reaction time determined by mental stats, he had the upper hand. So even as he swung wildly without technique, each slash of his blade still took down an earth imp with ease. Dark sword light flashed repeatedly in the caves of the second dungeon floor. With each swing, Kai's movements became more refined and precise. Passive skill, one-handed sword level 1, slightly increases sword mastery. Allows proficient use of one-handed swords, slightly increases all attributes while wielding a sword, slightly enhances combat instinct. Innate passive skill, sword bone, condenses sword intent into bone, greatly improves sword sense while wielding a sword, even without conscious awareness. Kai's two passive skills had already started taking effect. They were subtly refining his basic sword technique, turning his clumsy swings into sharper, more deliberate strikes. This improvement in fundamental sword skills brought the most obvious result: he was killing faster. At first, he relied on brute force to cut down each monster in one hit. But now, he could combine slashes, thrusts, and feints into a rudimentary combo that killed multiple enemies with a single attack. As the killing continued, blood flowed from the monsters faster than the dungeon could absorb it. The walls, unable to soak it all in, were plastered like they had been painted. The once dim blue cave now glowed dark crimson. Buzz. Having once again slain the monsters in front of him, a chilling sensation suddenly rose from behind. Without thinking, Kai spun around and stabbed backward. Gug. His black blade pierced straight through a goblin's thick neck. Pinkish foam mixed with air bubbled from the wound. Coldly watching the goblin struggle in its death throes, Kai yanked the sword sideways. Splurt. The resulting blood pressure blasted the goblin's ugly head clean into the air. Retracting his sword, Kai let the hot, stinking blood spray over his body. Then he turned and looked at the dungeon floor he had personally turned into a blood-soaked hell. Deep in his mind, he heard a clear, crisp sound like something had snapped. The next moment, without another glance, he turned and walked toward the stairs leading to the third floor. Chapter 8, Chain Reaction of Destruction. Inside the third floor of the dungeon, the previously silent cavern suddenly burst into chaos. The stone walls on either side writhed like liquid, continuously spewing out wave after wave of monsters into the cave. The newly birthed monsters, as soon as they landed, let out furious roars and immediately swarmed in a single direction. Within the encirclement of these monsters, a cold black sword shadow flashed tirelessly. Each time it swept past, it brought with it a torrent of splattering blood and sent several monsters back into the embrace of the dungeon. Since stepping onto the third floor, Takashi Nakai had been swinging his sword non-stop for over an hour. Even with 10 points in both endurance and constitution, plus the attribute bonuses from his one-handed sword skill, he was beginning to feel fatigue. His blade movements grew noticeably sluggish, no longer as fluid as before. But the dungeon, unlike K, showed no signs of exhaustion. It continued to generate low-tier monsters at high speed, throwing them onto this battlefield of blood and flesh. If any other familiar members had witnessed this scene, they would have been utterly shocked not by Kai's strength, but by the abnormal behavior of the dungeon. Normally, even with the dungeon's notorious malice, adventurers were at least granted short breathing intervals between monster spawns. The idea was to let people catch their breath, rather than being killed by endless waves. But Kai was a complete exception. Since he killed that goblin on the second floor, the dungeon had not given him a moment of rest. It continuously spawned monsters, wave after wave, without end. Even if he cleared one group, another would come charging in the next instant. This dense influx of monsters created an environment for even faster slaughter. If one counted pure kill count, in just a single hour, Kai had slain more monsters than most adventurers could manage in a week. Even though fatigue had started to set in, every swing of his black sword pushed the number higher and higher. Drenched entirely in monster blood, Kai's black coat had become indistinguishable from the dark stains clinging to it. It was impossible to tell where fabric ended and blood began. Huff. Huff. With a piercing thrust, Kai drove his sword through the head of a spider-like monster. Then he flicked his blade upward, splitting its skull in half. Gasping for breath, he raised his head. He had once again cleared the third floor from end to end. For a typical adventuring party, clearing a floor meant the monsters wouldn't respawn for a while. But Kai had barely taken a few breaths before cracks began forming again on the walls in the distance. More monsters would be coming soon. Come on. This is just overkill. What kind of sick party is this? Staring at the monsters continuously pouring from the dungeon walls, Kai's sword hand trembled slightly. The prolonged high-intensity battle had nearly worn him out. He could barely grip his sword anymore. Yet despite this, he charged forward silently once more, mustering the last of his strength and swinging his black blade again. Meanwhile, back on the dungeon's second floor, a well-equipped group of adventurers was methodically hunting the monsters that occasionally emerged from the walls. Behind him trailed a small, cloaked figure wrapped in a loose ivory robe, who skillfully collected magic stones from the corpses with a small knife. Hey, you little palom, move any slower and I'm docking your share later. The orange-haired young man with a short sword turned around, stabbing a goblin in the heart and glaring impatiently at the girl. Just a lowly supporter, and from Soma's familia no less. If you want a cut of the vallus we earn from risking our lives, you'd better show some hustle. Why yes, right away, adventurer Soma. Startled by the harsh tone, the girl flinched and quickly tucked herself deeper under her oversized robe, her hands moving a bit faster. But no matter how much she tried to speed up, she was still just one person. It was hard for her to keep pace with his team's monster-killing speed. The adventurers didn't care about her struggle. They pressed forward aggressively and soon reached the end of the second floor. "Captain, are we really going to do that later?" The same orange-haired man wiped his dagger while glancing at the girl, then leaned toward the middle-aged man at the center of the team. "I mean, she's just a supporter and a member of that drunkard Soma's Familia. Even if we don't give her any of the Velas, I doubt anyone would care." "Ari, that's awful. She's just a kid." Before the captain could reply, the team's only female archer cut in, annoyed. "Captain, say something. Trying to cheat a child out of her wages? How shameful." "You." Embarrassed, Ari was about to lash out, but the captain raised a hand to stop them. "Enough, Ari. Leela. Don't argue over a mere supporter. She's not worth us falling out over." With the dispute settled, the captain's expression turned serious. "More importantly, haven't you noticed? Something's not right with the dungeon today." "Not right?" "Yeah," he said. "Even though the upper floors usually have fewer monsters and slower spawn rates, today they're even slower than usual." The group exchanged looks and scanned the corridors they'd passed through. Sure enough, they had only encountered about a dozen monsters. Normally it would have been double that. So where did the rest go? That question hovered in everyone's mind. The captain turned toward the stairs to the third floor. "Let's go down a few more floors. If I'm right, something's happening down there." No one objected. Their team was among the top in level 1 adventurers and had even reached the 11th floor before. They weren't worried about danger. Besides, they were curious too what could cause monster spawn rates to drop. "Hey, Palom girl, we're heading to the lower floors. If you don't hurry up, we'll leave you behind." I'm coming. Please don't leave Lily behind." Panicked, the little Palom girl stuffed her magic stones into her pouch and rushed after them. The stairs from the second to third floor weren't long. Soon, the team reached the third floor entrance only to be hit by a wave of blood stench so strong it made their faces twist in disgust. At the front of the group, the captain froze, staring ahead in shock. He had visited the third floor countless times and knew it well, but now, he could no longer recognize it. Monsters. Piles and piles of monsters, both alive and dead. Blood coated the floor like a carpet. The walls and pillars were painted with splattered gore and steaming entrails. One word flashed in the captain's mind: a slaughterhouse. Who the hell had turned this floor into a meat grinder? He scanned the dense horde and then spotted the figure he was looking for. It was a young man, probably even younger than Ari, maybe only 20 years old. Covered in blood, he had rare black hair and black eyes. He wore a black coat and wielded a black sword. He darted through the monsters like a gust of wind. Each swing of his blade sent multiple enemies either bisected, decapitated, or disemboweled dead before they could scream. Watching this merciless figure in motion, the captain understood. So this was why the monsters weren't spawning. This man was killing them faster than the dungeon could produce them. His speed was incredible, and his power clearly immense. But what shocked the captain most was his swordsmanship. No fancy flourishes. No wasted movement. Every attack was simple yet efficient: straight thrusts, diagonal cuts, vertical slashes, horizontal cleaves, but each carried lethal precision and variation. Every strike targeted vital points. It was the kind of swordsmanship honed not for beauty, but for pure killing. How many life or death battles had he fought to refine such a blade? But even more disturbing was the look in his eyes, cold, emotionless, as if killing was second nature. Just one glance made it clear, this young man felt nothing toward life. Something inside him had already broken. Behind the captain, the rest of the team caught up and were equally stunned by the blood-drenched hellscape. And the black-coated killer carving through it. "Captain. What should we do?" "Don't panic. Let me handle it." The captain took a deep breath and stepped forward to speak. But before he could say anything, the man within the horde beat him to it. "Everyone else leave. The Palom girl stays." From the start, Kai had noticed this team of intruders. His mental stat of 10 was more than enough for him to observe while slaughtering. And he had noticed the small figure trailing behind them like a tail. Liliaruka Ard. He hadn't expected to run into her here. But it was perfect. Kai needed a supporter now anyway. Talk about perfect timing. Chapter 9, Inescapable Momentum. Hearing Takashi Nakai's words, everyone in the adventurer team couldn't help but cast sympathetic glances at Lily. He had slaughtered an entire floor of monsters. Just thinking about the killing intent required was terrifying. Monsters in the dungeon, aside from providing experience, only had magic stones that were worth anything. Yet despite killing so many, Takashi Nakai hadn't stopped once to collect them. If he only wanted fast experience, someone with his strength could easily farm higher-level monsters on the lower floors. But instead, he had chosen to linger on the third floor, relentlessly butchering the weakest of creatures. This led the adventurers to assume he was a bloodthirsty maniac. Naturally, they couldn't help but pity the girl he had specifically asked to stay behind. Some pitied her, but others were clearly gloating. Before the group left the third floor, Eri deliberately lagged behind a bit, sidled up to Lilaruka, and said mockingly, "Oh my, little Palam girl, you sure are lucky. To think someone this powerful would take a liking to you. I'm green with envy. If you're really envious, Eri-sama could stay behind with me." Clutching her sleeves, Lilaruka lowered her head. Her whole face was hidden under the hood of her oversized robe. Her slightly bitter voice came from within the shadows, "Or Eri-sama could go ask that person if he'd like to keep you instead. I wouldn't mind." "Ha ha ha. Me stay in your place? Are all Palams as funny as you?" Eri clutched his belly and laughed exaggeratedly. Then, without another glance back, he turned and headed for the stairs leading up, waving dismissively as he walked. "Oh, and about your share of the loot. Come find me for it once you make it out of the dungeon alive." Of course, if Lilaruka didn't make it out alive, she wouldn't be able to ask for anything. In Eri's eyes, being singled out by Takashi Nakai to remain behind was as good as a death sentence. That poor little thing would probably be used to test a sword once all the monsters on the third floor were wiped out, right? But that death would be quite fitting for someone of her status. A useless Palam could at least bloom with a final bit of value before dying by serving as a sword testing stone for this bloodthirsty maniac. Thinking this, Eri's mood lifted considerably, and the frustration from arguing with his teammates over the Palam supporter completely vanished. After Eri left, only Lily, standing at the stairwell, and Takashi Nakai, who was weaving through the monster horde, harvesting their lives, remained on the third floor. Sir. Lily stood dazed for a while and, seeing that Kai wasn't paying attention to her, had to speak up herself. "Why did you want me to stay? What do you plan to do with me?" The moment she asked the question, her heart tightened. As a naturally short-statured Palam, lacking the strength of dwarves despite being similar in height, and as a girl with no powerful attack skills, Lily had always been bullied first by her peers as a child, and now by other members of her familia. This ingrained mindset made her instinctively believe that Kai had no good intentions by making her stay behind. "What do I want you to do?" That's kind of a dumb question. It doesn't sound like something someone as clever as you would ask. Casually slicing a moth-like monster in half, Kai continued slaying creatures as he spoke. "As a supporter, you should already know what your job is. A supporter's primary role was to help the team by extracting the magic stones from slain monsters. If not done promptly, the dungeon would reclaim the corpses, and with someone dedicated to that task, the others could focus solely on fighting, greatly increasing efficiency during exploration and hunting." As a professional supporter, Lily of course understood all this. But still. That's all? Lily had mentally prepared herself for unreasonable demands, even something absurd like "use your body to test my sword," but to her surprise, Kai only asked her to do a simple job. "What else? Did you think I was keeping you here for something nefarious, Lilaruka?" Kai kept mowing down monsters, and seeing Lily hesitate, he urged, "If you don't hurry, the dungeon will reclaim the bodies, and I'll have to make you compensate me for the lost magic stones." Compensate? Although these were just low-level monsters, the number Kai had slain in mere moments was staggering. If those magic stones were converted into Velis, it would be a substantial amount. Panicking at the mention of compensation, Lily immediately pulled out a special knife from her cloak and began harvesting the magic stones. Even while working, her mouth didn't rest. "Why do you know my name, sir? We've never met before. With your rare black hair and black eyes, I definitely remember seeing you. I've only heard others talk about you. A small Palam girl wrapped in a cloak, a supporter. And a notorious shape-shifting thief, known for conning many level 1 newbies and even some veterans. Pretty distinctive. I doubt there's another like you in all of Orario." "You." Lily's face turned pale. Her well-kept secret had been exposed so bluntly, and she even forgot to address him respectfully. "No need to be so tense. I don't care about your past," Kai said calmly. "I just want you to understand that I have no ill intentions. You don't need to put on an act in front of me, just be yourself. I see. Well, thank you, sir, for your kindness." Taking a deep breath to calm her racing heart, Lily looked up and gave him a faint smile. Though the words were courteous, they lacked sincerity. After all, it was unpleasant to have someone dig up an embarrassing part of your past so casually. "Haha, no need to thank me." Kai accepted her thanks with a big smile, unfazed. "And one more thing, Lilaruka, my name is Takashi Nakai. Drop the sir, it sounds weird." "Weird? That's the point." Lily glanced sideways at his back, still dancing through monsters, and drawled, "Got it, Takashi sir. I said, don't call me sir. It sounds so awkward and embarrassing." Kai sighed. Was this little girl actually more mischievous than she looked? Lily ignored his protest and focused on harvesting stones. What's wrong with calling someone sir? I wish people called me Lady Lily all the time. Well then, Lady Lily, please stop talking. It's too embarrassing. Sure thing, Takashina sir. Ugh. Fine, do whatever you want. Half an hour later, the entire third floor had once again been swept clean by Kai. Over 1,000 monster corpses littered the ground, and though some were reclaimed before Lily could extract the stones, she still filled 3 large leather pouches. Takashina sir, that's everything. Can I leave now? Handing the bulging bags to Kai, who was leaning on his black sword and panting, Lily clearly wanted to get away from him. Though Kai had treated her decently, having someone who knew your deepest secret right beside you was nerve-wracking. But Kai wasn't about to let her go so easily. As my supporter, those bags include your share too, but it's not time to divide the loot yet. Get ready. Get ready for what? Lily tilted her head, confused. Just then. They're coming. Kai gripped his sword, and his gaze sharpened. Wah 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 wah. The screeches of monsters echoed through the floor once more. What? Lily's face twisted in disbelief as a goblin emerged from the wall. Didn't we just clear this floor? Why are new monsters spawning so fast? I guess. It's because of me. Kai charged forward again, answering without concern. After all, I'm a full-fledged outsider. Outsider? You're from outside Orario? In a way, yes. This dungeon sure knows how to treat guests. It's almost overwhelming. Smiling giddily, Kai dove into the monster pack again. His strength was nearly exhausted, and his attributes were starting to drop, but his swordsmanship sharpened through relentless combat was reaching new heights. Like an uncut gem, the more it was honed, the more brilliant it shone. It was thanks to that skill that he could stay in this overly welcoming dungeon. By dusk, 2 figures, one tall and one short, stumbled out of the dungeon's entrance. Takashina, Kai and Lily. Well, it was more like Kai, nearly collapsing, was leaning entirely on Lily for support. The height difference made it look like they were leaning on each other. Thanks for the hard work, Lily. Kai smiled and reached to pat her head. Don't. Lily ducked and grumbled from under her hood, you're covered in blood. I'm being generous letting you lean on me for the sake of today's haul, but a head pat? That's gross. Gross. Kai's hand froze. He looked down and realized he was indeed soaked in monster blood. It hadn't bothered him during the fight, but now that he'd relaxed, even he couldn't stand the stench and stickiness. Seeing his awkward expression, Lily offered, I remember there's a bathhouse in Tower of Babel for adventurers. If you want, I could show you. As thanks for sharing today's loot, please do, Lily. Babel Tower, 7th floor. Splash. Kai sank into a private bath. The hot water relaxed his body, washing away the dungeon fatigue. System. Leaning back, he opened his system interface. Name, Takashina Kai, race, human, profession, adventurer level 1, 1000/1000ths, Hestia familia, age, 23, 150, height, 176 cm, weight, 64 kg, mind, 10, 10, strength, 10, 10, agility, 10, 10, endurance, 10, 10, constitution, 10, 10, class inheritance, black swordsman, energy, 220.05, his base stats hadn't changed, but his EXP bar was maxed out. One more significant victory or feat, and he'd ascend to level 2, breaking the stat limit. But what caught his eye was a system prompt. Detected absorbable energy. Proceed with collection? It had appeared while he was fighting, but he was too busy then to respond. Absorbable energy. Kai pulled out a faint purple crystal, the magic stone, from a monster and didn't hesitate. Absorb. Collecting energy, the thumb-sized stone rapidly shrank and vanished into the air. His energy bar climbed from 220 to 251.37. Just one magic stone gave over 30 points of energy. When the bar hit 1 million, the system could execute a dimension jump. He'd thought only the system could gather energy passively, but it turns out he could accelerate it himself. Suppressing the urge to throw in the whole bag of stones, Kai opened the Black Swordsman skill tree. Of the 6 bottom-tier skills, 3 were still white. But now, they glowed faint gold. He ran his finger across each. Skill balance unlocked. Current level, level 1, chapter 10, need help, supporter girl? Ding. Congratulations, host. Skill, insight, successfully activated. Current level, level 1, ding. Congratulations, host. Skill, Godspeed reflex, successfully activated. Current level, level 1, with a series of system notifications, all the bottom row skills on the skill tree were now fully unlocked. 4 golden passive skills and 2 bright silver innate passive skills shimmered brilliantly. It looked incredibly impressive. Admiring the newly lit skill tree for a while, Takashi Nakai began reviewing the effects of each new skill. Insight level 1, 5000, slightly increases perception while wielding a sword, enhances combat intuition slightly increases sixth sense, and slightly raises dodge rate against surprise attacks. Balance level 1, 5000, slightly increases sense of balance while wielding a sword, slightly enhances 3D mobility, slightly raises agility. Godspeed reflex, level 1, 5000, slightly raises agility when using sword techniques, slightly increases evasion rate when receiving sword technique attacks, slightly boosts neural reflexes and enhances combat intuition while wielding a sword. Looking at these 3 highly practical passive skills, Kai thought to himself, if he returned to the 3rd floor of the dungeon now, he could easily hold out for another hour. Only after unlocking all the base skills at the bottom of the skill tree did he finally become a true beginner in the Black Swordsman inheritance. This was precisely why the system referred to level 1 as the stage of first glimpse through the door. After taking a bath and paying a professional cleaner to wash off the bloodstains from his clothes, Kai exchanged most of the remaining magic stones and materials for Valis. Then, he bought a huge load of ingredients and walked out of Babel Tower under the evening glow. Even though he'd split half of the magic stones and monster drops with Lily before leaving, Kai's remaining share was still incredibly lucrative. Please wait a moment, let me check. The total value is... What? Ahem, my apologies. The total is 230,000 Valis. Would you like to exchange it all? Kai couldn't help but chuckle at the stunned, almost horrified expression on the elven receptionist's face at the guild front desk when she saw the numbers. At the same time, he was also curious. Hestia, often teased by other gods as the poverty goddess and long accustomed to living frugally, how would she react when she saw this mountain of Valis? Just thinking about it made him feel excited. Tightening the money pouch at his waist, Kai quickened his pace. From the familiar housing area near Babel to the outskirts of Arario, he returned to the dilapidated church. Arms full of food and a few cute trinkets he impulsively bought on the way, things girls might like. Kai was about to push aside the statue blocking the basement door when he noticed it was already ajar, and the basement door was open too. With his constitution at 10 points, he could vaguely hear voices and laughter from below. One of Hestia's divine friends? Raising an eyebrow, Kai didn't think much of it and headed down the stairs. Lady Hestia, I'm back. But the moment he stepped into the basement, his smile froze. Inside the modest basement, a petite girl sat on the bed, a sweet smile on her pretty face. Her black twin tails hung behind her, and the backless white dress she wore clung to her petite frame, accentuating a surprisingly full figure. It was Hestia, as expected. What he didn't expect, however, was the one sitting beside her and chatting. Snow-white hair, a gentle and handsome face that unfortunately beat his own ordinary looks, and ragged clothing. Wasn't this the white-haired brat Belcrano? What the hell was he doing here? In an instant, Kai had a dozen thoughts flash through his mind. Taking a deep breath, he forced a smile and looked at Hestia. Lady Hestia, this is... Kai-kun. Noticing him at the stairs, Hestia immediately jumped off the bed and ran over barefoot. How was it? Your first dungeon run, was it smooth? Are you hurt anywhere? Hungry? Which floor did you reach? As she frantically checked him for injuries, Kai shook his head, put down the bags of food, and grabbed her hands to stop her probing. I'm fine, Lady Hestia. That's good, that's good. Relieved, Hestia's face lit up with a happy smile. Woo. As expected of Kai-kun. You look so at ease. At ease is a bit of a stretch. Recalling how he almost got killed by a goblin on his first entry, Kai honestly denied the compliment. Then he turned his gaze to the stiff, nervous Belcrano on the sofa. Lady Hestia, who's this white-haired kid on the couch? White-haired kid? Bell opened his mouth to protest, but something about Kai's sharp aura made him freeze up. The man in black before him radiated an invisible pressure. Just being looked at felt like being pricked by a blade. Oh, you mean him? Hestia smiled mysteriously and said, this boy is Belcrano. I picked him up on my way back this afternoon. He didn't have a familia yet, so I decided to keep him. Just like you, he's now a member of the Hestia familia. You two should get along well. What? Kai immediately lost his composure. What's wrong, Kai-kun? Ah. Nothing. Looking again at Bell, who had no idea what was going on, Kai had to marvel at the pull of fate. Even though he joined Hestia's familia before Bell this time, that white-haired protagonist still ended up picked up by Hestia like in the original story. So this is the power of main character plot armor, huh? And Bell, under Kai's intense stare, straightened up in panic. Did I do something wrong? Why is he staring at me like that? Should I say something? He seems so scary. Is this the senior of my familia? He's terrifying. What do I do? Help me, goddess. Bel turned his gaze toward Hestia, pleading silently for rescue. However. Ooh. Beef. Look at the marbling, it's perfect. Even a minotaur wouldn't grow meat like this. Rummaging through Kai's bags full of high-grade ingredients, Hestia was completely starry-eyed. She hadn't eaten proper meat in months. She didn't even notice Bel's cry for help. Come on, white-haired brat, I'm not going to eat you. What are you so scared of? Seeing Bel's panic, Kai smirked. He figured he might be fighting alongside this kid in the future, and in a place as dangerous as the dungeon, he needed to see if the kid had what it took. So he kept a serious face and asked coldly, listen up, kid. I'll ask you once. Why do you want to join a familia? The dungeon is no playground. To ensure his voice sounded cold enough, Kai even activated his sword pressure. Instantly, an aura like sharp blades emanated from him. Bel, facing it head-on, turned pale. His heartbeat even skipped a beat. Because I want to. Bel clenched his teeth and forced himself not to show weakness. I want to be more manly, more handsome and reliable. I want to meet girls in the dungeon. What? And create my own hero's tale. Under the sword pressure, Bel couldn't think. He just blurted out his deepest desire. Looking into Bel's clear and determined eyes, Kai could tell he was sincere. Become stronger through adventure. Meet different types of beautiful girls. Become a hero. This kid really meant it from the heart. So this is the power of a protagonist. Even his dream of building a harem sounds so noble and pure. Kai chuckled and turned off his pressure. Sure, the idea was childish, but this straightforward, earnest kid wasn't half bad. Seeing Kai finally smile and the pressure vanish, Bel breathed a sigh of relief and slumped down from his ramrod posture. Hey now, don't relax just yet. You may have passed my test, but the real challenge lies ahead. The dungeon will be the one to judge you. Eh? That was a test? Seeing Bel's shocked expression, Kai couldn't help but tease, don't act all innocent now. Tomorrow morning, you're coming with me into the dungeon. Be prepared, white-haired brat. Yes, I will. Bel nodded seriously then frowned, a bit miffed. Senpai, I'm not called white-haired brat. I'm not your senpai either. Glancing at Bel's bright white hair, Kai smirked. White-haired brat, can you cook? Just regular home-style food. I can manage. Then come help out. Why yes, sir. Satisfied, Kai picked up the food bags and headed upstairs. Since the basement had limited space, they'd have to cook in the church above. The next day, in the dungeon's third floor, Kai gripped his black sword tightly. Drops of dark red blood ran down the blade, reflecting the hellish scene around him. Every inch of the cave was soaked in monster blood. Severed limbs and crushed corpses, goblins, bugbears, moths, stingers piled like mountains. There were twice as many monsters as yesterday. With a flick, Kai cleared the blood off his blade and sighed at the lost potential. If only he had extracted all those magic stones. How much Valis would that have fetched? He could probably afford a better place for Hestia to live. Maybe. It's time to find a supporter. As he pondered hiring someone to help gather stones, Kai quickly left the third floor before the next wave of monsters spawned. Coming up from the stairwell to the second floor, he saw Bel fighting two goblins with a dagger, holding his own quite well. White-haired brat, if you keep stalling, I'm leaving you behind. Kai stood at the stairs to the first floor. Though his words were harsh, his hand was already on his sword hilt ready to jump in if Bel couldn't handle it. Wait. Please, just a bit longer. Bel yelped as he fought harder. Though his form got sloppier under pressure, goblins weren't high-level enemies. He barely managed to hold them off. A few moments later, Bel pulled his dagger from the goblin's chest and waved proudly to Kai. I did it, senpai. That morning, Kai had brought Bel into the dungeon. Just like the day before, Kai encountered no monsters on the first floor, but as soon as they hit the second, they met an old friend. Goblins. Seeing them, Kai shamelessly pushed Bel to handle them alone while he returned to his hunting ground on the third floor. HMPH, you've still got a long way to go, white-haired brat. Choosing to forget how he was nearly killed by a goblin on his own first day, Kai released his grip on his sword and stuffed his hand into his coat pocket as he walked toward the stairs. Behind him, Bel gripped his blood-stained dagger tightly, eyes burning with determination. Someday I'll make you call me by name, not white-haired brat. Senpai. After battling in the dungeon for almost the entire morning, both Bel and Kai were feeling worn out. So instead of heading back into the dungeon after lunch, they sat down in the plaza outside Babel, watching passers-by and chatting. So what? White-haired brat, you're actually into the older sister type? Isn't that obvious? Bel's face turned red, but he insisted, When it comes to a woman's most attractive feature, of course it's the chest. Despite his innocent appearance, Belle's views on men and women were surprisingly mature for his age. But his perspective wasn't driven by lust, it was more like a righteous belief. Because of that, it didn't come off as disgusting at all. In fact, it made him seem honest and likable. A natural lady killer regardless of age. HMPH, so you're a boob guy, huh? Figures you're just a snot-nosed brat. Even your taste in women is shallow. Liking boobs isn't wrong, is it? Even though there were no women nearby, Belle still turned beet-red just saying the word boobs, clearly uncomfortable discussing such things in public. But soon enough, he fought back, cheeks flushed as he glared at Takashi Nekai. Since you think my standards are shallow, what about you, senpai? What kind of woman is your ideal? HMPH, that's why I say you're just a dumb little brat. Only immature kids ask dumb questions like that. Immature. That's right. Immature. Takashi Nekai glanced at him. Seeing how seriously Belle was listening, he suddenly felt a guilty urge to corrupt the poor kid. But he continued, listen up, white-haired brat. Only naive and simple-minded kids like you get caught up in choosing one or the other. A real man like me chooses everything. Everything? Belle's eyes lit up like he had just seen the truth of the universe. This one line had answered a lifelong question that had plagued him for years. Whether it's a clumsy rookie adventurer, a cute barmaid, a clueless elven princess, or a lone warrior goddess standing at the peak of strength. Wanting to grow closer to cute girls, building relationships with beauties of different races, even seeking a harem. There's nothing wrong with that. If women show their affection, how can a true man only choose one and cast the others aside? Takashi lectured with passionate righteousness, eyes full of meaning. So? Do you see how immature you are now? You're right. Compared to you, senpai, I really am too immature. Everyone makes mistakes, white-haired brat. You've got a lot to learn. While chatting idly, Takashi suddenly noticed a familiar figure in the crowd being dragged away forcefully by several people. Now that Belle had officially joined the Hestia Familia, according to the original storyline, the anime plot should be starting soon, right? After a brief pause, Takashi wiped the grin off his face and spoke seriously. Hey, white-haired brat, I just remembered something urgent. Stay right here and don't wander off, I'll be back soon. Without explaining, he bolted off, disappearing in a flash with full use of his agility stat. In a dark alley outside the Soma Familia, several men surrounded a small figure cloaked in an ivory robe. Their faces were twisted with menace and contempt. Lily, let's skip the pleasantries. Hand over the goods, or do we have to take them by force? The bearded man in front looked down at her with a sneer. If we rough you up, you won't be able to return to the dungeon for days. You know what to do, right? Lily trembled, her hands clutching her coin pouch tightly, knuckles turning white. Still, she clung to a shred of hope they might just be bluffing. Taking a deep breath to steady her voice, she said, I don't know what you're talking about. But if you leave now, I'll forget everything and won't report this to Soma-sama. Now move, I have work to do. She stepped forward and pushed, but the man didn't budge. Lily, you're a clever kid, so why can't you read the room right now? The man chuckled. You thought you were being sneaky last night, sneaking back late, but someone was already watching you. And today you snuck out again first thing in the morning. With that much money, it's no wonder people are jealous. But no worries. That money's about to be ours. Lily's mind reeled, but she quickly regained composure. If she couldn't keep the valise, fine. But they weren't going to take it without paying a price. If you want it that badly. Without screaming or threatening, Lily calmly pulled out 2 fat coin pouches. Come and get it yourselves. The thug's breathing grew heavier at the sight of those pouches, and the bearded man lunged greedily. But Lily's hidden smile twisted dangerously in the shadow of her hood. Just then you, fellas. What's the game here? A familiar voice fell from above, and Lily's eyes widened with joy. Hope. The men scowled and looked up. Perched casually on a wire strung between the buildings was a man dressed in all black hair, coat, pants, his entire figure shrouded in darkness. Can someone really perch there? Before they could react, the man leapt, his black coat fluttering like a raven's wings, and landed right between Lily and her assailants. Who the hell are you, sticking your nose in this? It was obvious now this man was here to help Lily. The air grew tense. But the man in black, Takashi Nekai, only smiled and said cheerfully, we meet again, support girl. But your situation looks kinda rough. Isn't that obvious? Or are you just here to mock me, Takashi Dono? Lily emphasized Dono sarcastically. Takashi just laughed. Still as prickly as ever, Lily. He drew his sword. A jet black blade that matched its master. The black sword sliced through the air and brought an end to daylight. to their daylight. Chapter 11, In the Name of Lady Hestia, I swear the black blade sliced the air, singing with a low metallic hum. Its edge grazed the men's necks. Moments later, thin lines of blood surfaced. He had avoided their major arteries so the bleeding was minimal. But the raspy, gasping sounds from their throats filled the alley. Only after they collapsed, clutching their necks in pain, did Takashina slowly sheath his sword. From start to finish, it was clean, practiced, and efficient after all. He'd repeated that motion thousands of times over the past 2 days. As he looked coldly at the bodies, he felt oddly calm. This was his first time killing people directly. By all rights, he should have felt nauseated. But he didn't. It felt no different than cutting down monsters in the dungeon. If anything, compared to grotesque creatures, the darkness in some humans was worse. Behind him, Lily breathed a sigh of relief. Thank you. So much, Takashi Nadano. Thank me? You're misunderstanding something. Takashina turned, smiling as he spoke. I'm not some hot-blooded justice freak. Don't tell me you think I helped you because we teamed up yesterday? Lily stared blankly at his grin. Her mind was scrambled. This guy doesn't play by any normal rules. Then why did you save me? She asked half-jokingly. Could it be you've fallen for me? To her surprise, Takashina nodded. That's not wrong. Ever since we teamed up yesterday, I've been thinking about you all morning. He's been thinking about me? All morning. Call the guards. We've got a creep here. Lily stepped back, hugging herself. Takashi Nadano. You're joking, right? Not at all. I'm completely serious. His firm denial crushed her final hope. And then he added, I'm a practical man. I never do things without a benefit. So think about it, Lily, what do you have that's worth me going after? His casual tone made it sound perfectly reasonable. And she couldn't argue. What did she have that was worth this man's attention? He was strong. In a place like Orario, there was nothing beyond his reach. Fame, respect, power, money, he could have it all. So what could she offer? A tiny thought came to mind. Lili.con? It was a term whispered among the gods, referring to men who preferred childlike girls, or those with petite frames. That's not just a preference, that's a full-on pervert. And no. Takashi Nadano. I'm still just a kid. I couldn't possibly satisfy you. She trembled, clutching her robe tighter. Small's fine. I don't mind. Looking at Lily, Takashina recalled yesterday's profits from the dungeon and smiled. In fact, I think you're exactly what I need. You don't have to think that. In Lily's eyes, Takashina now had little devil horns and a tail. That smirk on his face made her dizzy. I thought you were a good person. Not like those thugs who hurt me. Good person? Takashina pointed at himself. Then at the corpses. Ask them, do I look like a good guy? I see. Her eyes turned cold. Her body trembled uncontrollably. So there were no good people. Her hope had always been just a delusion. Was she going to surrender? Despair crushed her chest. Tears welled up. Blip. A drop of sorrow hit the ground. Hearing that voice, the smile on Kai's face disappeared. Lily, do you dislike me that much? I did save you just now. Even if it's just out of gratitude, shouldn't you at least consider my request? To have overwhelming strength yet still pretend to be some gallant hero. Trying to use both kindness and intimidation? As expected of Takashi Nadano, your methods are truly masterful. Lily shot Kai a cold glance and sneered, if you're going to make a move, just do it. But my body isn't as wonderful as you imagine, flat and frail. Try not to hurt yourself. Although the thought of dying rather than submitting flashed across her mind, in the end, Lily chose to endure. The life of a small supporter like her was insignificant. No one would even remember her existence. To die so meaninglessly, she couldn't accept it. Live. As long as she lived on, she would find a chance one day to pay back today's humiliation tenfold. But just as she braced herself, eyes shut, waiting to be violated, she heard Chenmo speak. Lily, I think you may have misunderstood. Looking at the tightly shut eyes and trembling form of Lily like a scared hamster, Kai finally understood why she'd been so resistant. This was all a huge misunderstanding. Misunderstood? A major one. Facing the puzzled look from the little Palam girl, Kai said helplessly, I just wanted to ask you to join my adventurer party, to help me pick up dropped items and magic stones. I actually took a newbie from my familia into the dungeon again this morning, but didn't collect many magic stones, so I really miss working with you yesterday. Kai's voice was sincere, his gaze clear. He didn't look like he was lying at all. Plus, with his overwhelming power, he didn't need to lie to someone like her. So, it was really just a misunderstanding? The moment she realized it, Lily felt a burning heat rush over her. She didn't need a mirror to know that her face was red enough to bleed. The overwhelming shame made her want to vanish on the spot. Then, let me ask again. Kai sighed and asked, Lily, will you be my supporter? Of course, mid-sentence, Lily stopped herself. To her, being someone's supporter didn't matter. She always drifted between adventurer parties. But remembering the earlier misunderstanding, the words that had reached her lips were swallowed back down. To put it simply, Lily was throwing a tantrum after embarrassing herself. Even though I don't know what level you are, with your strength, Takashi Nadano, finding a supporter should be easy. Why insist on me? Tilting her head slightly, Lily muttered from beneath her hood, are you actually a perverted Lilicon? Where the hell did I act clingy? And why does Lilicon need the perverted prefix? Hearing her unreasonable claim, Kai shook his head helplessly. Despite being more mature than Belle in many ways, she was still just a kid. And as an adult, Kai wouldn't argue too much with a sulking child. He forced a smile and said gently, then tell me, how can I prove I'm not a Lilicon? A perverted Lilicon. Lily corrected him immediately. Alright, perverted Lilicon. Apologizing in his heart to all the true gentlemen Lilicons out there, Kai continued, so how do I prove I'm not one? You can't. Because you're one. For a moment, Kai seriously wanted to spank this brat. Still, he held back and forced a smile, speaking in a coaxing tone, then how about this? As he spoke, he stepped closer and held up his right hand in front of her, pinky extended. What's that supposed to mean? Lily looked confused. Some new insult gesture? In this world, some gods had introduced an upper world culture where sticking out the middle finger meant disdain. Of course not. Kai's smile twitched. This is a contract gesture from my hometown. If both parties agree using this gesture, the promise can't be broken. Now, give me your right hand. Is it really that magical? Though skeptical, Lily still extended her right hand as instructed. From her loose sleeve, a pale, pink-tinged arm emerged. Her pinky was soon hooked by Kai's. Back home, the full version of the gesture included chanting pinky swear, whoever breaks it hangs for 100 years, but Kai felt that was too embarrassing. So he replaced it with a local version. In the name of Lady Hestia. Looking into Lily's hooded eyes, Kai solemnly swore in the alley, I, Takashi Nake, swear I am definitely, absolutely, without question not a perverted Lilicon, and I will never do anything bad to a little girl like Lily. At first, Lily felt the mood was serious due to the invocation of Hestia's name, but once she heard the vow's contents, she burst out laughing. What the heck? Swearing in your goddess's name? Just for that? I'm going to tattle to Hestia-sama, you know. Even if you do, she won't make a fuss over it. Shaking his head, Kai opened his palm. Lily, can you agree now? HMPH. Only because it's for Hestia-sama's sake. With a smile forming at her lips, Lily high-fived him. Smack. As their palms met, Lily felt her heart skip a beat, and her face flushed. That's settled then. Unaware of Lily's reaction, Kai nodded in satisfaction, turned, kicked aside some corpses blocking the way, and walked out of the alley. Let's hit the 4th floor this afternoon. I'm getting bored of the third same old monsters again and again. Lily finally snapped out of her daze when his silhouette was about to vanish down the alley. Glancing at the corpses, she quickly gathered her coin pouch and caught up. Why don't you ask them if I'm a good guy? Was that even a question? Yes, he killed without hesitation and always looked grumpy. But Takashi Nadano, strong as he was called, never bullied the weak. He really was a good person. Chapter 12, an interesting guest. Early morning, in the slums on the outskirts of Orario. Inside a dilapidated church, a dozen plainly dressed men bustled around. Some were skilled masons, others adept carpenters, and even a well-known architect was among them. The former altar was now piled high with construction materials. Standing near the basement entrance, Kai greeted the workers. Take a break, everyone. Have some water. Mr. K, we're fine. Just leave it over there, said the burly, square-faced foreman with a smile before returning to work. All right then. Keep it up. I'll give you a bonus when the job's done. Woo. You got it, Mr. Kai. Leave it to us. Hearing the promise of more pay, the workers redoubled their efforts. Money well spent, Kai thought with a smile. After watching for a while, he turned and left the church, heading toward the city. It had been half a month since he transmigrated to this world. Thanks to Lily's help, all the magic stones from their hunting had been collected efficiently. After exchanging them for Valis, the first major expenditure Kai made was hiring workers to renovate the church. He had initially planned to buy a house near Babel Tower, but Hestia refused to move. Perhaps she'd become emotionally attached to the place. And honestly, the slums had their advantages. It was quieter than the crowded familia zones. So after several failed attempts to relocate, Kai gave up and focused on fixing up the church. If he expanded the basement, refurbished the interior, added statues of Hestia, and lit some fancy lanterns. It might actually turn out pretty great. So, with a clear vision, Kai splurged. In just 2 weeks, he'd spent over 3.4 million Ferris, far more than buying a new home. And it wasn't over, the later renovations would cost even more. Only with his insane monster farming speed could he afford such extravagance. Any other adventurer team would go bankrupt from this alone. With that kind of investment,